Welcome back, dear listener, and a warm welcome if this is your first time visiting this channel. Tonight, we begin with a curious question, one that sounds almost strange at first. Why did medieval monks fear cheese at night? Before we begin this long and gentle journey into the medieval night, I invite you to do something simple. If you enjoy wandering through these forgotten histories, and if you find comfort in voices that move slowly through the past, consider subscribing to this channel. It is a quiet way of saying yes to more nights like this, and of helping keep these old stories alive. The night has settled over the monastery. The last bell has already tolled, and the air is heavy with silence. You walk slowly through the cloister, that stone walkway surrounding the square garden at the heart of the monastery. The arches rise above you, simple yet solemn, their shadows long and wavering in the flicker of a single lamp. Outside, the fields lie in darkness, but here, within these walls, the world is contained. Nothing moves except the faint stirring of the breeze, carrying with it the scent of damp stone and old wood. The monastery is not asleep, not entirely. Behind the thick doors of the dormitory, the brothers lie on their straw pallets, their bodies still, their breaths slow. Some whisper prayers, half dreaming. Others struggle with wakefulness, their minds turning over the day's work. The cloister itself is hushed, as though time has stopped. In this silence, every sound matters, the creak of a wooden beam, the distant hoot of an owl, the faint drip of water into a stone basin. The monks believed that the night was a threshold. It was not merely the absence of day, but a passage into a realm where the body grew weak and the soul was more exposed. At night, one was more open to temptations, visions, even dangers unseen. That is why monasteries treated the night with such care. The final prayers of the day, known as compline, were whispered with great seriousness. Every word was meant to guard the mind against wandering too far in dreams. The cloister itself was designed for such a purpose. Its square form, with the garden at the center, represented order and eternity. Walking through it at night was like moving inside a prayer itself. Each column, each arch, each shadow served as a reminder, the world outside was chaos, but here, in the heart of stone, there was order, rhythm, and a fragile kind of peace. And yet, even here, fear lingered. The monks feared not only the temptations of the flesh, but the workings of the mind when sleep crept upon them. It was believed that demons were especially active at night, whispering into ears, shaping dreams, stirring desires that daylight suppressed. This is why food mattered so much. To eat unwisely before bed was to open a door to what lay beyond the veil of sleep. Imagine a monk finishing his evening meal, sitting quietly in the refectory. The light of the oil lamp glows against the walls. On the table before him is bread, perhaps a small cup of watered wine, and cheese. It is ordinary food, humble food. But to him, that cheese is not only nourishment. It is a question: will it bring comfort to his body, or trouble to his soul? Will it calm his dreams, or disturb them with visions that test his vows? The cloister at night is the perfect setting for such thoughts. You can almost hear the quiet shuffle of sandals against stone as a brother paces slowly, turning these fears over in his mind. He has prayed, he has worked, he has fasted. And yet, the simple matter of what he has eaten weighs heavily on him. For medieval thought did not separate body and soul as we often do today. What entered the stomach shaped the spirit. To consume cheese at night was, in some monasteries, considered reckless, even dangerous. The night amplifies these fears. In daylight, cheese is harmless, nourishing, even festive when shared in community. But under the cover of darkness, the rules of the world seem to shift. The mind loosens its grip, dreams weave themselves, and the imagination becomes a door through which all manner of spirits, memories, and desires might pass. The cloister at night is not empty. It is filled with unseen presences, memories of the day, echoes of prayers, and the weight of centuries of belief. The stone does not sleep. The arches seem to listen. And the monks, lying in their narrow beds, know this well. Their fear of cheese at night is not simply superstition. It is part of a larger world where everything carries meaning, where even the most ordinary things can shape the fate of the soul. And so, as you lie here listening, you too are invited into that cloister. Picture yourself beneath the archways, walking slowly by the dim light of the lamp. Feel the cool stone beneath your hand, the stillness pressing around you. You pause, you breathe, you listen. In that silence, you sense what the monks once feared, that the night is not empty, and that what we carry within us, even something as small as a piece of cheese, can ripple outward into dreams, into visions, into eternity. This is where our journey begins. In the stillness of the cloister at night, with shadows stretching long across the grass, with candles burning low, and with a question that lingers softly in the air: why did monks fear cheese when the sun went down? As the night deepens and the cloister falls into shadow, one cannot help but wonder, what did these monks eat to sustain their long hours of prayer and study, and why did even their simplest meals, like a humble piece of cheese, carry so much meaning and caution? As the bells toll softly, calling the monks to the refectory, the air carries a mixture of expectation, calm, and the faint aromas of the day's meals. The refectory itself is long and austere, a hall of polished wood and stone, where sunlight would have danced earlier in the day, and now, under flickering candlelight, shadows gather in gentle, undulating patterns across the walls. Each monk enters quietly, moving with a rhythm learned through years of repetition. Here, there is no haste, no idle chatter, only the quiet presence of a community in deliberate motion. The monastic diet is simple, measured, and purposeful. Bread, pottage, vegetables, occasionally small portions of meat, and dairy are consumed according to rules designed to cultivate humility, patience, and attentiveness. Meals are more than sustenance, they are lessons in discipline, in mindfulness, and in the careful observation of one's own body and spirit. Every morsel has its place, every bite its meaning, and the timing of each consumption is guided not merely by hunger but by centuries of experience and spiritual reflection. Cheese, however, holds a unique position within this hierarchy of food. Unlike bread or vegetables, it is dense, rich, and, in the eyes of some monks, potent in ways that extend beyond mere nutrition. To eat cheese is to engage with a substance that seems to carry energy of its own, capable of stirring both body and mind. Some monks believe that cheese, particularly when consumed in the late hours, may awaken unusual visions, temptations, or unrest. In the delicate balance of the monastic life, where every choice is observed and weighed, cheese at night is approached with caution and, sometimes, fear. The process of eating itself is deliberate. Monks sit in long rows, hands folded or resting quietly, listening to the soft cadence of readings from holy texts. Conversation is discouraged, and even the act of chewing is done with measured attention. Each bite becomes an exercise in awareness. They notice the texture of bread against the tongue, the warmth of broth as it slides down, the subtle tang of cheese lingering at the corners of the mouth. Food is studied, contemplated, and, in this meditation, transformed into something more than nourishment. It becomes a guide, a moral lesson, a reflection of the self. Beyond the refectory, the rules of monastic life continue to shape experience. After meals, monks often walk slowly along the cloister, the stone paths cool beneath their feet, the night air carrying the scent of damp earth, moss, and the faint tang of aged dairy. These walks are not merely practical, they are a continuation of mindfulness, a way to settle the body, calm the mind, and prepare for sleep. And yet, even here, the caution regarding cheese remains. The dense, rich curds are said to linger in the imagination as well as the stomach. To eat cheese before bed may invite vivid dreams or restless sleep. Perhaps a minor moral failing appears in the mind's eye, or perhaps an imagined shadow of a demon slips into a dream. In the medieval imagination, food and the spiritual self are inseparable. Meals are acts of devotion and indulgence. Even something as seemingly innocuous as cheese can be a moral as well as physical concern. For a monk, the quiet consumption of a meal is both protection and preparation. By eating with intention and restraint, he guards against the temptations of the flesh and the spirit. To ignore this careful wisdom is to risk unrest, not only in the night but in the very essence of the self. Imagine, for a moment, the ambient sounds of this space, the faint shuffle of sandals on stone floors, the whisper of robes as monks rise and move, the soft murmur of prayer blending with the occasional crackle of candle flames. The aroma of bread and broth is tempered by the distinct, lingering scent of cheese, aged in the cool, dark cellars below the monastery. Each sensory detail is amplified by the quiet, the anticipation of night, the stillness of bodies preparing to rest. The monks are alive to every sensation, yet they move slowly, deliberately, as if time itself were measured by the rhythm of their awareness. This attention to the body, the spirit, and the environment forms the foundation of the monastic approach to diet and sleep. Meals are not merely acts of consumption but exercises in observation, reflection, and discipline. Cheese, in particular, becomes a symbol, a lesson, and a subtle test of mindfulness. To partake without thought is to invite not just physical discomfort but spiritual agitation. To partake with careful awareness is to honor the delicate balance between body, mind, and soul, to prepare for the tranquility of sleep, and to navigate the unseen world that stirs in darkness. As we continue through the monastery's quiet night, consider the care with which these men approach their most ordinary acts. Notice the devotion in the smallest details, a bite of cheese, a sip of water, the slow adjustment of robes before walking to the cloister. These acts, repeated night after night, form the rhythm of life and sleep within the walls of stone and candlelight. They remind us that in this world, nothing is trivial. Even the simplest meal carries meaning, and even a common piece of cheese can influence the course of dreams, the mood of the night, and the state of the soul. And yet, one question lingered as the night stretched on and the last candle flickered in the refectory: what was it about cheese, in particular, that made it so feared? What unseen forces, real or imagined, seemed to ride the Kurds into the dreams of these devoted men? Tonight, in the next chapter, we will step into the medieval mind itself, exploring how thoughts, beliefs, and the quiet imagination of monks transformed a simple food into a source of subtle terror. And so, as the refectory empties and the monks return to their cells, one question quietly hovers in the candlelit corridors: what was it about cheese that stirred both fascination and fear in the medieval mind? To modern ears, it seems strange, almost whimsical, that a humble food could hold such weight. Yet, in a world governed by ritual, observation, and centuries of accumulated belief, even the most ordinary substance could be transformed into a vessel of meaning. Cheese was no mere nourishment. It was an object of contemplation, a potential agent of dreams, and, at times, a silent provocateur of fear. To understand this, we must first step into the medieval conception of the human body and soul. For monks, the two were inseparable. Every thought, every act, every bite of food could influence not only the health of the body but the state of the soul. Theories of humors dominated medical and spiritual thinking: blood, phlegm, black bile, and yellow bile. Each humor was tied to temperament, personality, and even moral inclination. Cheese, rich and dense, was thought to carry particular qualities that could unbalance these delicate humors if consumed at the wrong time. Too much richness before sleep could awaken phlegm or excite the blood, leading to restlessness or, worse, dreams that tested the spirit's discipline. The monks were meticulous in recording and reflecting on these effects. Small notebooks, margins of sacred texts, or whispered notes in the cloister's corners sometimes contained observations on the body, the soul, and the influence of food. Cheese appeared repeatedly in these records, noted for its potential to provoke agitation in the mind. In one manuscript, a monk cautioned against curds eaten by candlelight, suggesting that the density of the cheese could invite images not of God, but of temptation and unrest. Another scholar recorded vivid dreams following the late-night consumption of fresh cheese, describing both wonder and terror in equal measure. To us, these notes may appear quaint or superstitious, yet they reflect a serious meditation on the unseen powers of daily life. Beyond humoral theory, imagination and folklore also played a role. Medieval Europe was steeped in belief that the night carried a veil between the ordinary and the extraordinary, a threshold where spirits, demons, and visions could emerge. Cheese, with its complex textures, aromas, and even occasional molds, was considered a kind of liminal substance. To eat it before sleep was, in a sense, to invite the night to speak more vividly, to allow the unseen world to brush against consciousness. The mind of a monk, trained to observe, pray, and reflect, could easily interpret a vivid dream or sudden anxiety as a direct result of cheese eaten too late in the day. The very process of preparing cheese also contributed to its mystique. Monks were involved in every stage of its creation: curdling, pressing, aging, and storing in cool cellars. This intimate knowledge of transformation, milk becoming curd, curd becoming cheese, might have amplified the perception of its power. Transformation itself was a concept laden with spiritual significance. If food could change from one form to another, who was to say it did not carry unseen energies into the eater's body and dreams? In this way, cheese became a symbol, a reminder that even the simplest acts could connect the physical and spiritual worlds. Imagine the quiet hours in the monk's cell. Candlelight flickers against stone walls, casting shadows that dance with every small movement. A monk lies awake after a modest supper, perhaps tasting the last lingering flavor of curd, pondering the mysteries of the night. Every sound, the distant toll of a bell, the whisper of a fellow monk turning in his bed, the faint rustle of robes, takes on an amplified, almost supernatural weight. The mind, sensitive from days of contemplation, can fill these moments with visions, dreams, and questions. In such stillness, even cheese, a food so ordinary, can become a focal point of attention, a medium for curiosity and caution alike. And yet, the fear associated with cheese is subtle, not dramatic. It is not a terror that strikes like lightning, it is a gentle, pervasive sense that something is possible, something might shift, something within the self may stir. This is the essence of medieval thought, where ordinary acts are never entirely ordinary, where discipline and mindfulness govern even the smallest details, and where the night itself is a participant in spiritual reflection. To fear cheese is not irrational, it is part of a comprehensive worldview in which food, body, mind, and spirit are deeply intertwined. In monasteries across Europe, from the cool cellars of the Alps to the stone halls of England, monks took these beliefs seriously. Cheese was consumed with intention, often earlier in the day, and paired with reflection, prayer, or communal reading. Those who disregarded such guidance might experience restless sleep or unsettling dreams, which in the medieval imagination could carry moral or spiritual significance. Even today, we can sense the care in this practice, the awareness that every act, no matter how small, shapes the experience of life and rest. And so, the simple question of why monks feared cheese at night opens a window into the medieval mind. It shows us how attention, belief, and imagination intertwine to create a world in which food is more than nourishment, sleep is more than rest, and the ordinary is never entirely ordinary. And yet, as we ponder these mysteries, another question emerges, gentle and subtle, leading us deeper into the monastery's night. If cheese can influence dreams, what other foods, rituals, or actions might also shape the mind and spirit as darkness falls? It is to this exploration that we now turn in Chapter 4, moving beyond the cheese itself to understand the broader interplay between diet, discipline, and the unseen world that governed the lives of medieval monks. As the monastery settles into silence, the world outside darkened by the night, the mind of a monk begins to drift. But for the medieval observer, sleep was never simply a surrender to rest. It was a continuation of the day's discipline, a stage for reflection, and, at times, a place where visions might appear. The nocturnal hours held an almost sacred significance. In this liminal space, the mind was particularly receptive, a canvas upon which both divine inspiration and subtle fears could emerge. And here, cheese, once consumed, could play a curious role. In the medieval imagination, dreams were not idle entertainment. They were considered windows into the soul, conduits for divine guidance, or warnings of moral missteps. Monks recorded dreams with care, interpreting them as signs that required attention. A restless night could suggest spiritual imbalance, while a vivid, unusual vision might indicate a message from beyond, a lesson to be learned, or a moral reflection to ponder. Cheese, with its richness and complexity, was believed to influence these nocturnal experiences. Its heaviness could weigh on the body, subtly altering the humors, stirring the imagination, and opening pathways to visions both delightful and unsettling. Imagine a monk lying on his simple straw mattress, the chill of stone walls pressing gently against the room. Candlelight flickers, throwing faint shadows that sway across the ceiling. He feels the residue of the evening meal, perhaps a piece of creamy cheese, eaten without thought earlier, now a silent participant in his consciousness. The ordinary taste of curd transforms into a presence in the mind, a hint of the unseen. He closes his eyes and the darkness behind his lids is no longer empty. Shapes, sounds, and colors, heightened by the careful attention cultivated over years of disciplined meditation, begin to shift and move. It was common for monks to record these experiences in marginalia, notes, or reflections beside sacred texts. Some wrote of encounters with ethereal beings, half-formed visions that seemed to hover between the real and the imagined. Others documented peculiar feelings of restlessness, sudden urges to rise and pray, or fleeting anxieties that appeared as if from nowhere. Modern psychology might interpret these phenomena as the mind reacting to digestion, sensory stimulation, or circadian rhythms, but for medieval monks, they were profound. Cheese, heavy and dense, might slow digestion, subtly agitating the body, and thus encourage the mind to wander along pathways it might otherwise not explore. These observations were not considered trivial. To the medieval monk, every sensory experience carried weight, particularly those preceding the most vulnerable state of being, sleep. It was thought that the night held portals, thresholds where angels, demons, and spirits could approach. Dreams were messages, tests, or reminders, often tied to one's conduct, discipline, and consumption. Cheese, in this context, became more than food. It was a subtle catalyst for imagination, a mediator between the corporeal and the spiritual, capable of influencing the mind's reception of nocturnal mysteries. There is also a fascinating interplay between expectation and experience. A monk who believed strongly that cheese might disturb his dreams was more likely to notice any subtle discomfort, any vivid thought, as confirmation of that belief. Awareness itself became a magnifier, a lens through which the night's visions were interpreted and remembered. In this way, cheese gained a reputation not only from physical properties but from the attentive, reflective, and sometimes anxious minds of those who consumed it. It is worth noting that not all visions or dreams were feared. Some were inspiring, comforting, or instructive. The monastery's walls, the quiet cadence of prayers, the gentle hum of evening chants, all of these provided a framework that guided the interpretation of the night's experiences. Cheese might subtly nudge the mind into heightened awareness, but the disciplined practices of meditation, confession, and reflection helped frame these nocturnal wanderings. The result was a delicate balance, fear tempered by ritual, curiosity softened by discipline, imagination guided by spiritual context. As we consider these nighttime experiences, it becomes clear why monks approached sleep with such care. The simple act of lying down was an entry into a world both familiar and mysterious, governed by the subtle interplay of body, mind, and spirit. Cheese, seemingly mundane, had earned a place in this ritualized attentiveness. It was a reminder that the ordinary could harbor significance, that every sensation and intake of the day might ripple into the quietest hours of night. And so, as the night deepens, we are drawn to another question, a gentle curiosity that extends beyond cheese alone. If one simple food could influence dreams and visions, how did the broader medieval diet shape the nightly experiences of those who lived entirely within the monastery's disciplined world? What other meals, herbs, or rituals became agents of imagination, guiding the soul through the shadows and into rest? It is to this exploration that we now move in Chapter 5, examining the careful diets, evening rituals, and subtle practices that prepared monks not just for sleep, but for the careful navigation of dreams themselves. As the moon climbs higher and the night settles deeper across the monastery, the day's activities fade into a hushed stillness. Yet for the medieval monk, the evening was never simply a time to rest. It was a delicate transition, a threshold between the tangible work of daylight and the subtle mysteries of the night. Central to this transition was the evening meal, a ritual carefully observed, quietly savored, and laden with both physical and spiritual significance. Every ingredient, every morsel, had its place in a system designed to prepare the body and mind for sleep, and ultimately, for reflection and visions in the darkness. The diet of a monk was humble, yet far from unconsidered. Bread, often dense and coarse, formed the basis of most meals, paired with legumes, vegetables, and occasionally fish. Meat was rare, and red meat rarer still. Dairy products, including milk, butter, and cheese, were treated with particular attention. Cheese, in particular, held a curious reputation. Its richness and complexity made it both desirable and suspect. While it provided sustenance, it was also believed to influence the mind, sometimes provoking dreams that could be enlightening, confusing, or unsettling. Monks approached such foods with caution, timing their consumption to ensure balance between nourishment and the serenity of the night. Evening meals were consumed in silence or near silence. The refectory, often a long, narrow room with stone walls and wooden benches, echoed with the soft clinking of bowls and spoons, a gentle accompaniment to whispered prayers or readings from sacred texts. The practice of listening to readings while eating, known as lectio divina, served a dual purpose. It was nourishment for both body and spirit, a rhythm that guided thought gently from the material to the contemplative. The content of these readings, often stories of saints, parables, or reflections on virtue, subtly shaped the mind, priming it for introspection as the night deepened. Herbs were another crucial element of the evening diet. Dill, fennel, sage, and thyme were used not only for flavor but for their believed properties in aiding digestion, calming the body, or influencing mental clarity. Some monasteries even cultivated small gardens specifically for the production of these calming herbs. A modest handful could be added to a broth or sprinkled over bread, serving as a quiet agent of comfort, subtly guiding the body toward restfulness. In the same way, wine or small amounts of ale, measured with precision, might ease tension, though excessive consumption was strongly discouraged. The monk's evening, like a carefully composed symphony, balanced sustenance with restraint, pleasure with discipline. Rituals extended beyond what was eaten to how the evening unfolded. Meals were taken in communal harmony, yet each individual remained mindful of inner reflection. After the meal, monks might engage in short periods of meditation, silent prayer, or simple chores, moving slowly through the cloisters as night wrapped its calm around them. Candles, dimmed to a soft glow, traced gentle patterns of light and shadow across walls, invoking both a sense of safety and a sense of the unseen. Even minor acts, arranging the table, cleaning the utensils, or tending to the hearth, were performed with deliberate care, a quiet preparation for the vulnerability of sleep. The combination of diet and ritual created a unique environment for nightly rest. Scholars of the time believed that disturbances in either could lead to unrest or troubling dreams. Cheese, with its rich texture and slow digestion, could tip this balance. Taken at the wrong time or in the wrong quantity, it was thought to incite restlessness, awaken latent anxieties, or invite visions that were more troubling than enlightening. Yet when consumed with mindfulness and within the rhythm of established practices, it could support reflection, calm, and even inspiration, subtly shaping the monk's dreamscape and reinforcing the spiritual lessons of the day. Even the simple act of washing hands, often accompanied by silent prayer, became a bridge between the day's labor and the contemplative night. The senses were gently soothed, the body prepared for stillness, and the mind guided into a reflective state. Each gesture, each taste, each moment of attention formed a seamless sequence, a ritualized passage toward the sacred space of sleep. The monks' understanding of their bodily and spiritual needs, though framed in medieval belief, reveals a profound awareness of how environment, food, and practice intertwine to shape experience. As we consider these evening practices, it becomes apparent that the fear or reverence surrounding certain foods was inseparable from the larger rhythm of monastic life. Cheese was but one element in a carefully balanced world, where attention to the body, the senses, and the spirit created a gentle architecture for nightly repose. Its influence was both subtle and significant, a reminder that even the most ordinary of meals could ripple into the extraordinary realms of dreams and visions. And so, as we ponder the quiet power of evening routines, another question naturally arises: if cheese and diet could shape visions, how did the other elements of monastic life, the chants, the bells, and the very structure of the cloister, contribute to the monk's nocturnal experience? How did the soundscape and architecture of the monastery guide, protect, or even challenge the mind as it drifted toward sleep? It is to these auditory and spatial influences that we now turn in Chapter 6, exploring the subtle music of the night, the toll of bells, and the whispering stone corridors that accompanied the monk's journey into dreams. As the evening deepens, the monastery shifts into a rhythm all its own. The tasks of the day have long been completed, the sun has slipped beneath the horizon, leaving the cloisters bathed in the soft silver of moonlight. Shadows stretch along the stone walls, shifting slowly with the flicker of candles in each cell. It is a time of transition, a moment poised delicately between wakefulness and the gentle descent into sleep. For the monks, this was a sacred interval, structured by both the space around them and the subtle, measured sounds that filled the night. Among the most defining of these sounds was the tolling of bells. Monastic bells were far more than practical devices. They marked time, announced prayers, and reminded the brothers of their duties, yet they also shaped the atmosphere of the night. Each toll was deliberate, measured, and resonant. The vibration of the bell's sound would travel through stone corridors, bounce across cloisters, and settle in the quiet corners of the monastery. To an outsider, these bells might appear stark or even austere. But to the monk lying in a small cell, the sound was both guidance and comfort, a steady pulse connecting him to the community, to tradition, and to the sacred order that structured his days and nights. As the evening deepens, the monastery shifts into a rhythm all its own. The tasks of the day have long been completed, the sun has slipped beneath the horizon, leaving the cloisters bathed in the soft silver of moonlight. Shadows stretch along the stone walls, shifting slowly with the flicker of candles in each cell. It is a time of transition, a moment poised delicately between wakefulness and the gentle descent into sleep. For the monks, this was a sacred interval, structured by both the space around them and the subtle, measured sounds that filled the night. Among the most defining of these sounds was the tolling of bells. Monastic bells were far more than practical devices. They marked time, announced prayers, and reminded the brothers of their duties, yet they also shaped the atmosphere of the night. Each toll was deliberate, measured, and resonant. The vibration of the bell's sound would travel through stone corridors, bounce across cloisters, and settle in the quiet corners of the monastery. To an outsider, these bells might appear stark or even austere. But to the monk lying in a small cell, the sound was both guidance and comfort, a steady pulse connecting him to the community, to tradition, and to the sacred order that structured his days and nights. The corridors themselves were alive in their own way. Constructed of thick stone, the passageways carried sound with surprising clarity. A whisper in one corner could travel to another, a subtle creak in the floor could signal a distant presence. At night, these corridors became a labyrinth of echoes, where every step, every sigh, and every movement held amplified significance. The architecture of the monastery was designed to support this interplay between silence and sound. Cloisters enclosed open-air courtyards, channeling both moonlight and acoustics, allowing bells and chants to drift effortlessly into sleeping quarters. For the monks, these corridors were not mere passageways, they were instruments of order, discipline, and, sometimes, apprehension. It was within this interplay of space and sound that the effects of food, particularly cheese, became most pronounced. The richness of a late evening meal could mingle with the ambient sounds of the monastery, stirring both body and mind. A heavy piece of cheese might sit in the stomach as the bells tolled for Compline, the final prayer of the day. The vibrations of the stone, coupled with the weight of digestion and the residual aromas of herbs and bread, could amplify the mind's sensitivity to the environment. Shadows appeared to lengthen, corridors seemed more mysterious, every echo hinted at movement unseen. In the minds of some monks, this created fertile ground for visions, dreams, and even fears. The monks' awareness of this delicate balance was profound. They observed, with careful attention, how the combination of diet, light, and sound shaped the approach of sleep. Compline, the last prayer, was recited not only to honor God but also as a ritual to calm the spirit, aligning body and mind with the rhythm of night. The gentle resonance of the bells acted as a guide, helping the brothers regulate their breathing, slow their thoughts, and prepare for the liminal space where the conscious mind yielded to dreams. It was believed that the vibrations carried by stone could cleanse the mind of distractions, ensuring that visions, or, in the case of late-night cheese, troublesome phantasms, remained controlled, meaningful, or at least contained. The corridors themselves held a layered significance. Beyond guiding movement, they framed the perception of time and distance within the monastery. A corridor's length, the thickness of its walls, the echo of a footstep, all contributed to the monk's sensory experience. In the dark of night, these physical realities were magnified. The senses sharpened in low light, and the imagination often filled the spaces between echoes. A small rustle could become the whisper of a fellow monk, a shadow could suggest a movement just out of reach, and a lingering aroma from the kitchen might suggest a presence in the empty halls. These subtle experiences were interpreted through a cultural lens steeped in spiritual symbolism, where even ordinary elements of the monastery could carry moral or mystical significance. Interestingly, the bells themselves were part of the monks' education in attentiveness. Listening closely, discerning differences in pitch, duration, and cadence, trained them to be mindful in all things. This skill, developed over years, was essential for navigating the quiet hours of the night. A monk who could interpret the subtle cues of sound was better prepared to manage the complex interplay of diet, digestion, shadows, and sleep. The slightest misstep, whether a heavy meal at the wrong hour or an inattentive ear, could disturb this harmony, leading to restlessness or unsettling dreams. Cheese, in its richness and slow assimilation, was often the culprit most likely to tip the delicate balance. As we consider these factors together, the toll of the bells, the echoing corridors, the careful rituals of evening meals, we begin to see the monastery as a living organism. Every sound, every shadow, every carefully timed action contributed to a system designed to guide the monks safely into the quiet of night. It was a form of sensory architecture, one that shaped thought, reflection, and rest. Even the simplest items, like a piece of cheese, gained significance in this finely tuned environment, becoming a symbol, a potential agent of dreams, or a harbinger of restless visions. And so, as the last echoes of Compline fade and the corridors grow silent, the monk prepares to settle into his cell. The stone walls, the lingering aroma of herbs, the memory of the evening meal, and the final tolls of the bell converge to create a space poised between the waking and the dreaming. It is within this delicate balance that we begin to understand why something as ordinary as cheese could hold such power, and why the night, guided by bells and shaped by stone, was a time of both caution and wonder. And as we reflect on the soundscape and the architecture that cradled these nightly rituals, another question naturally emerges: if the bells and corridors could influence the monk's mind so profoundly, what role did the sleep environment itself, his cell, his bed, the textures and temperatures of the night, play in shaping dreams, visions, and even fears? How did these physical surroundings, combined with the monk's careful evening habits, create the perfect stage for the mysterious reputation of cheese at night? It is to these personal spaces of rest that we now turn in Chapter 7, The Monk's Cell and Nightly Sleep, where we will explore the intimate, carefully arranged environments that guided monks through the long darkness, and how even small details, like a wedge of cheese left too late, could ripple through the mind as sleep took hold. The monk's cell is the smallest stage in a vast monastery, yet within its humble stone walls, the entire rhythm of nightly life unfolds. Imagine stepping quietly across a cold, uneven floor into a space no larger than a modest modern bedroom, where every object has its place and every sound matters. A narrow wooden bed stands against the wall, topped with a thin blanket, simple and functional, its fibers worn smooth by decades of use. A small wooden stool waits in the corner, and a shelf holds sacred texts, illuminated faintly by the warm glow of a single candle. The walls, thick and unyielding, hold the echoes of footsteps from corridors, the soft clatter of distant dishes, and the faint murmurs of monks still tending to their evening chores. The air is cool, yet not unkind. It carries the mingled scents of candle wax, aged parchment, the lingering fragrance of herbs, and the subtle richness of evening meals. These smells are not merely background, they guide the mind, signaling the transition from day to night, from labor to contemplation, from wakefulness to rest. Here, The monk lies down with deliberate care, aware that the position of his body, the alignment of the blankets, and even the placement of the candle are not trivial matters. They are rituals designed to prepare both body and soul for the delicate balance of sleep. Sleep, in this setting, is more than the cessation of activity. It is a disciplined practice, a continuation of prayer, meditation, and mindfulness. The monk's body is trained to remain still, even in slumber, while the mind is guided gently toward reflection. Every breath is measured, every shift of position purposeful, for any disturbance might ripple through the body and awaken restlessness. In such a carefully controlled environment, even the smallest stimulus can hold unexpected weight. A faint gust of wind through a lattice window, the echo of a distant bell, or the subtle aroma of food from the previous meal could stir both body and mind. Among these stimuli, cheese holds a peculiar prominence. Its rich, lingering texture is slow to digest, and its subtle tang carries through the body in ways that other foods do not. A slice of cheese eaten before bed becomes more than nourishment. It is an agent that can influence dreams, awaken memories, and, according to the beliefs of the time, even invite visions or spiritual unrest. Monks were deeply attentive to such effects. They noted how certain foods could provoke vivid dreams, how the heaviness in the stomach might awaken restlessness, and how the combination of diet, room, and quiet could shape the unseen landscape of sleep. In their eyes, a wedge of cheese at night could be a test of vigilance, a subtle interaction between the physical and the spiritual, the mundane and the mystical. The architecture of the cell amplifies these subtle effects. The small latticed window allows moonlight to spill in uneven beams, casting shifting patterns across the stone floor. Shadows stretch and move as if alive, responding to the passing clouds outside. The walls, dense and cold, carry sound differently at night. A distant cough, the rustle of a robe, or the faint stir of wind through the monastery's cloisters can seem amplified in the quiet. The cell becomes a sensory theater, where even ordinary objects, the mattress, the blanket, the candle, interact with light, sound, and scent to shape the monk's experience. Monks believed that these interactions were not merely coincidental but meaningful. The soul, they reasoned, was influenced by the body and the environment. A calm body, in a well-prepared cell, could drift toward restorative dreams. A heavy meal or a disturbed environment might invite visions, temptations, or minor disturbances of spirit. Cheese, eaten at the wrong hour, symbolized this delicate balance. Its richness was both comforting and dangerous, nourishing yet potentially unsettling. To avoid unwelcome nocturnal consequences, monks developed careful routines, timing meals, choosing modest portions, and arranging their cells to maximize comfort and minimize distraction. Within this private space, the monk becomes intimately aware of his own body. The rhythm of digestion, the slow settling of muscles, and the quiet monitoring of heartbeat and breath become as important as the prayers whispered before sleep. The monk observes the effects of cheese with the same meticulous care he applies to sacred texts. He notes the subtle heaviness in his stomach, the way the body shifts in response, and the onset of mental imagery as consciousness drifts toward dream. Each night becomes a careful experiment, a negotiation between bodily needs, spiritual vigilance, and the mysterious effects of diet. And yet, even in this quiet, disciplined environment, there is an element of tension, not fear, but awareness. The richness of cheese, the coolness of stone, and the faint shadows cast by candlelight create a setting in which the mind is alert to subtleties. Dreams may be more vivid, shadows may seem to move, and the line between ordinary sleep and nocturnal vision becomes perceptibly thin. The cell, in its austere simplicity, is not just a bedroom, it is a stage upon which the interplay of body, mind, and spirit is performed each night. It is here, in the quiet contemplation of the monk's cell, that the fear of cheese at night makes sense, not as superstition, but as a deep understanding of the delicate balance between nourishment, environment, and spiritual vigilance. The cell itself, the architecture, the objects within it, and the rhythms of the night all contribute to an awareness that even a simple piece of food may carry consequences far beyond mere sustenance. Here, the ordinary transforms into the extraordinary, and the careful monk learns to honor the subtleties of his body, mind, and soul with every meal, every breath, and every moment before sleep. Beneath the monastery, hidden from the sun and the hurried world above, lay the cellars. These underground chambers were dark, cool, and silent, holding a treasure that was as essential as it was mysterious: cheese. Imagine descending a narrow, worn staircase of stone, each step echoing softly against the thick walls. The air grows cooler, heavier, carrying a mixture of earth, stone, and the subtle tang of maturing dairy. Here, in the deep stillness, the cheese slept. Wheels of varying sizes rested on wooden shelves, their rinds textured with time, some smooth and pale, others dappled and darkened with mold. The cellars were not merely storage, they were sanctuaries of transformation. Milk, once simple and fluid, had been turned through laborious effort into something enduring, something that would sustain the community across long winters. The monks tended these chambers with the same care they offered to the scriptorium or the cloister garden. Each wheel was rotated, inspected, sometimes washed with salt, sometimes brushed with cloths imbued with herbs. Even in the quiet of night, a monk's footsteps could be heard softly in these underground halls, a rhythmic accompaniment to the silent breathing of the cheeses. The atmosphere of the cellars is thick with both scent and history. The aroma of aging dairy mingled with the faint earthiness of the stone walls, and every inhalation brought a tangible sense of life slowed to its essentials. The monks, ever aware of the delicate interplay between body, soul, and environment, knew that the cheeses were not inert. They were potent, living foods, carrying within them subtle powers that could affect sleep, dreams, and even spiritual well-being. A wheel of cheese, left too close to a monk's nightly meal, might disturb the stomach or stimulate imagination. Its tang, its richness, and even the mystery of its fermentation were taken seriously in quiet contemplation. To descend into the cellars at night was a practice of awareness and reflection. A solitary lantern cast flickering shadows across rows of wheels, turning each into a miniature monument of care and patience. The monks moved slowly, listening to the subtle creak of the floorboards, the faint settling of stone walls, the distant drip of water from the ceiling. Every sensory detail mattered. The cold air touched skin, the smell penetrated deeply, and the low hum of silence seemed almost audible in its intensity. Here, the ordinary act of checking stored food became a ritual, a moment of quiet reverence for the unseen life of the monastery. Cheese was both sustenance and symbol. Certain varieties were reserved for the sick or infirm, believed to carry healing properties when consumed carefully. Others were used in meals for the healthy, yet always with mindfulness, particularly in the evenings. There was an understanding that cheese, eaten too close to sleep, could provoke dreams, stir imaginations, or invite subtle unease. The monks spoke in whispers of night cheeses, a playful yet serious term for varieties thought to influence dreams, sometimes bringing visions of angels, sometimes of more unsettling spirits. The cellars themselves seemed to hold a quiet energy, amplifying these effects through their cool, shadowed spaces. Within the walls of the cellar, the monks practiced patience, observation, and care. They understood that the transformation from milk to cheese was itself a form of meditation, a slow, controlled process shaped by time, temperature, and touch. The silence of the underground, interrupted only by the occasional scuff of sandal on stone or a muffled sigh, mirrored the slow maturation of the cheeses above. Each wheel, resting quietly on its shelf, was a testament to the value of deliberation, the hidden rewards of meticulous work, and the subtle influence of everyday life on the mind and soul. The fear of cheese at night, then, was not born of whimsy but of attentiveness. The monks were aware of how easily the body and mind could be disturbed, how the richness of food, combined with the quiet power of shadows and silence, could lead to restless sleep. By storing the cheeses carefully, tending them with devotion, and limiting consumption before bedtime, they sought to preserve not only their own peace but the sanctity of dreams. A simple act, such as taking a wheel from the cellar or setting a slice on the table, became a moment of reflection, of control over one's environment and one's inner life. The cellars, with their low ceilings, cool stones, and scent-heavy air, remind us that the world of the medieval monk was layered, intricate, and alive with subtle interactions. Cheese was never merely food, it was an active participant in life, work, and sleep. To enter the cellars is to understand the care and reverence that define monastic life, the quiet attentiveness that shaped even the most ordinary moments, and the respect for the unseen effects that touched body, mind, and soul during the long nights of prayer and rest. And as the monk ascends from the cellars, lantern flickering, cheese wheels resting in their dark sanctuary, a question lingers softly in the mind: how did this humble food, tucked away beneath stone, become a focus of fear and mindfulness, a symbol of the unseen influence of daily life on the delicate balance of sleep and spirit? As the monastery clocks toll softly in the dead of night, the monks awaken from their beds of straw or simple mattresses to perform the nocturnal offices, the quiet and deliberate rounds of prayer known as the vigils. The corridors are empty except for the muffled sounds of sandals against stone and the faint rustle of robes. Candlelight flickers against walls and arches, casting elongated shadows that dance slowly across the cold, worn floors. It is in this hour, suspended between wakefulness and the deep slumber that follows, that the monks' minds are most sensitive, most receptive to subtle influences. And here, the relationship between food, body, and soul becomes especially poignant. Cheese, consumed at the wrong hour, was thought to have the power to stir the mind, influence dreams, or even awaken visions that could trouble the spirit. These were not fanciful beliefs but the result of long observation, of generations of monks noticing patterns in sleep, temperament, and health. A wheel of strong-smelling cheese, eaten before the midnight office, might lead to vivid dreams, restlessness, or an uneasy heart during prayers. The monks believed that what one consumed did not vanish at digestion but lingered, intertwined with spirit and thought. Certain cheeses, those aged, pungent, or rich, were called dream cheeses in whispered conversation, though no official texts ever mentioned them. It was understood that these foods could provoke the mind into heightened imagination, stirring creativity or disquiet, and that night, when the soul is most open, was particularly susceptible. Thus, the careful timing of meals, the moderation of indulgence, and the avoidance of specific foods before sleep became an essential practice, part of the quiet discipline of monastic life. Imagine the monk kneeling in the cold, stone chapel. The candlelight illuminates faces set in serene concentration. Hands are folded, eyes lowered, voices soft and steady. Each psalm recited carries rhythm, repetition, and intention. And behind the sanctuary, in the dormitory or the refectory, the lingering aroma of cheese, softened by the warmth of the previous day's work, clings faintly to the air. It is here that dreams take shape, sometimes as visions of the sacred, sometimes as echoes of past memories, or sometimes as strange and inexplicable images, the mind's response to the day's meals and the night's meditation. Sleep and prayer were intimately connected. A restless night, stirred by an indulgent bite of cheese, could interrupt not only rest but spiritual reflection. Monks recorded, in scattered marginalia and private notes, their observations, dreams influenced by the richness of a meal, the timing of digestion, and the hidden qualities of specific foods. Some noted that creamy cheeses brought vivid, even joyful visions, while aged, pungent cheeses could summon anxious or unsettling thoughts. In this way, food became intertwined with the spiritual and psychological life of the monastery, each meal a careful negotiation between sustenance, comfort, and the unseen consequences of indulgence. The discipline of midnight prayer heightened awareness of these connections. Each bell, each whispered line of scripture, each flicker of candlelight acted as both a guide and a counterbalance to the mind's wandering. Cheese, as mundane as it seemed, could challenge this equilibrium. A small wheel, placed too close to the evening meal, might lead to dreams of strange landscapes, wandering spirits, or even unsettling apparitions. The monk's careful routines, rituals of meal timing, posture, and prayer, were designed to preserve harmony between body, mind, and soul, ensuring that neither indulgence nor hunger disturbed the quiet order of night. Yet, despite their care, the unexpected still occurred. A monk might wake, heart racing, recalling fragments of vivid visions, an animal, a shadow, a distorted face. These nocturnal experiences were not merely dismissed, they were considered meaningful, sometimes instructive. Cheese, with its transformative process, seemed to hold a latent power, the milk of the day, the skill of the cheesemaker, the slow alchemy of fermentation, all converging into a substance capable of subtle influence. The monks accepted this as part of the quiet mystery of life, a reminder that even the simplest foods could carry unseen effects. And so, the quiet night continued. Bells tolled, prayers were offered, candles burned steadily. The cheese rested in its cellars or on shelves, silent but potent, awaiting the morning's light and the next day's care. Dreams unfolded, shaped by devotion, by diet, and by the hushed rhythm of monastic life. Each monk, aware of the delicate balance between nourishment and nocturnal vision, carried forward the knowledge that even a single bite of cheese could ripple through the mind and spirit, shaping the unseen hours of the night. In this interplay of light, stone, ritual, and sustenance, the monks' lives were defined by attentiveness. Food was never merely functional. Sleep was never merely rest. Every element, from the bell to the bread to the wheels of cheese, contributed to a careful orchestration of existence. And as the night moved quietly onward, the monastery itself seemed to breathe in unison with the monks, a living testament to patience, care, and the gentle mysteries of everyday life. By the final tolls of the midnight office, the monk returned to bed, the echoes of prayers mingling with the subtle influence of the cheese-consumed hours before. The mind and spirit, tuned through centuries of observation and devotion, were prepared to enter dreams, sometimes calm, sometimes vivid, but always within the sanctuary of the monastic order. And so, the question lingers softly: how did these small wheels of cheese, hidden in cellars and consumed in moderation, exert such a profound influence over the nights, the dreams, and the quiet inner life of those who devoted themselves to contemplation, prayer, and simple living? As the long night stretches on in the monastery, a hush settles over the stone halls, broken only by the occasional creak of timber, the distant toll of a bell, or the whispered footfalls of a monk making his rounds. By now, the influence of the evening meal, its breads, broths, and, of course, cheeses, begins to make itself felt. Some monks, sensitive to these subtle shifts, awaken restless, their dreams unusually vivid, or their sleep unexpectedly shallow. In response, monasteries had developed quiet rituals, remedies of their own, aimed at preserving both physical and spiritual balance through the night. These remedies were simple, grounded in centuries of observation, and deeply intertwined with the rhythm of monastic life. A sip of warm herbal infusion, often chamomile or mint, might calm an unsettled stomach and settle the mind. A short walk along the cloister's stone path could restore clarity and composure, the cold air drawing the mind away from uneasy thoughts stirred by food. Others relied on gentle breathing exercises, quietly repeating psalms or prayers, their voices low, almost inaudible, syncing the rhythm of heart and mind with the slow, steady toll of the monastery's hours. Cheese, with its richness, often triggered the need for such remedies. While nourishing and sustaining, it could, when eaten at the wrong hour, unsettle the stomach or spark an overactive imagination. Monks recognized patterns. Creamy cheeses might encourage dreams of abundance, of feasts and plenty, while aged, pungent varieties often stirred more restless, even disturbing visions. Remedies, therefore, were tailored. Some monks chewed a small sprig of herb after meals, others drank water infused with sage, fennel, or dill. The goal was not indulgence, nor strict denial, but balance, to ensure that the influence of food did not override contemplation or sleep. Midnight remedies were also rooted in spiritual philosophy. Monks believed that the body and soul were inseparable. Care for the one was care for the other. A disturbed night could compromise prayer, reflection, and ultimately the pursuit of holiness. Herbal infusions, gentle walks, and silent reflection were all part of a carefully observed system designed to maintain equilibrium. It was understood that these small acts, sometimes no more than a sip of liquid or a moment of stillness, could ward off not only physical discomfort but also subtle spiritual unease. The remedies extended beyond the immediate night, too. Monks kept careful notes on the effects of certain foods on sleep and spirit. Marginalia in manuscripts would record observations: cheese of the goat, eaten too late, brought dreams of unrest, or herbal infusion calmed visions stirred by rich milk. Over time, these quiet observations became part of the living tradition of the monastery, informing future generations about the unseen consequences of what might otherwise seem ordinary meals. Even the physical environment played a role in these remedies. The cold stone walls, the quiet of the cloister, the rhythm of candles burning steadily all contributed to a sensory framework that encouraged calm. A monk might place a small wheel of cheese on a shelf far from the bedside, mindful of its potential influence, while preparing a cup of calming herb tea before kneeling for the midnight office. Every choice was deliberate, a testament to the belief that care, attention, and gentle ritual could protect the mind and spirit through the long hours of darkness. And yet, despite all care, some nights remained restless. Dreams were vivid, visions persisted, and the faint aroma of cheese or other foods lingered in the air. These moments were not feared but observed, interpreted, and sometimes recorded. They were reminders of the intricate web connecting body, mind, and spirit, of the unseen forces that shaped life even in the quietest hours. Remedies were tools to guide these forces, not control them entirely. The monk's dedication to these practices reflects a profound understanding of human experience, that even the simplest food, the smallest action, could ripple through the night, shaping dreams, thoughts, and spiritual awareness. The careful orchestration of meals, sleep, prayer, and remedies was a testament to patience, observation, and the search for inner harmony. And so, the night continues. Candles burn steadily, prayers are whispered, herbs are sipped, and the silent wheel of cheese waits on its shelf. Each monk, guided by centuries of accumulated wisdom, navigates the delicate balance between nourishment and disturbance, between dream and wakefulness. And as the hours pass, the remedies work subtly, unseen but deeply felt, allowing the mind to settle, the spirit to rest, and the monastery to breathe in quiet harmony. One cannot help but wonder, in these quiet practices, did the monks truly understand the mysteries of night, or were they simply attuned to the subtle rhythms of life itself? How much of the midnight unease was shaped by cheese, and how much by the careful attentiveness cultivated over years of disciplined observation? As the monastery settles deeper into the night, a profound silence descends. The world outside has long surrendered to darkness, yet within these ancient walls, the rhythm of life continues, slow and deliberate. Torches flicker along stone corridors, casting gentle shadows that dance across the cloister arches. In this quiet, the monks awaken not just to the calls of their bodies or the lingering influence of their evening meals, but to a sacred responsibility, the vigil. Nighttime prayers were not a mere ritual, they were a bridge between the physical and spiritual realms, a practice meant to align the mind, the body, and the soul in perfect harmony. These vigils were structured and intentional. Monks divided the night into hours of prayer, each marked by the tolling of the bell and the gentle cadence of psalms. The canonical hours, matins, lauds, prime, terce, sext, none, vespers, and compline, were more than measures of time, they were a way of living within the sacred rhythm, even as the mind struggled against drowsiness and the body sought rest. The cheese that had unsettled sleep earlier now mingled subtly with the spiritual experience, shaping focus, dreams, and the clarity of contemplation. In the dim light of the chapter house or the small cells, monks knelt with bowed heads, their hands folded, their breath steady and deliberate. The words they whispered were familiar yet potent, invoking protection, reflection, and understanding. Each prayer was a tool to navigate the night, a safeguard against the restless energy that could seep in from foods eaten too late or desires left unspoken. And yet, the prayers were more than protective measures, They were acts of intimacy with the divine, small threads of devotion woven through the fabric of darkness. The vigil was also a time of observation. Monks noted subtle changes in themselves and their brothers. Did the cheese eaten at evening provoke unrest or strange dreams? Did the herbal infusion taken after supper calm the mind and fortify concentration? The silent attentiveness of the night served both spiritual and practical purposes, revealing truths about the body, the mind, and the interplay between them. Records were kept in the margins of manuscripts, not in the form of scientific analysis as we understand it, but as reflections, anecdotes, and teachings for future generations. Walking the cloister at night, the monks' footsteps echoed softly against the stones, a rhythm that reinforced discipline and presence. The night air, cool and fragrant, carried subtle scents of herbs, burning wicks, and damp stone. Every sense was engaged. Even the faint smell of the evening's cheese lingered, a reminder of human needs and vulnerabilities, juxtaposed against the transcendence sought in prayer. Monks learned to accept both, the earthly and the spiritual, as intertwined forces shaping their lives. Nighttime prayers were not uniform. Some monks engaged in silent meditation, letting the rhythm of breath and heartbeat guide their connection to the divine. Others recited psalms aloud, their voices low, almost merging with the sound of the wind or the distant call of an owl. Candles flickered on stone altars, illuminating icons and crosses, creating an intimate stage for devotion. These practices were deliberately slow, measured, almost hypnotic, designed to allow both the body and mind to drift gently toward awareness and reflection. The vigil also contained elements of community. Even in silence, the presence of others reinforced discipline and attention. Monks knew that their shared observance created a collective rhythm, a harmony of devotion that extended beyond the individual. In this way, the monastery itself became a living organism, breathing and moving with the night, guided by the prayers, steps, and subtle rituals of those within. Yet, vigilance was not without its challenges. Restless minds, stirred by rich food, worries of the day, or even lingering fears of the unseen, could disrupt concentration. Here again, small remedies and practices, herbs, quiet walks, gentle reflection, intersected with the spiritual rhythm, reinforcing the delicate balance between body, mind, and soul. The night, while silent, was never empty. It was alive with subtle sounds, thoughts, and energies, and the vigilant monk navigated these waters with careful attention. Through this disciplined practice, the monks cultivated a profound intimacy with both the divine and the human experience. Nighttime prayers were a lens through which the mundane, cheese, cold halls, restless muscles, was transformed into meaning, reflection, and connection. And as the hours passed, the quiet vigilance not only prepared the body for the day ahead but trained the spirit to recognize patterns, to anticipate unrest, and to embrace the gentle rhythms of night. And so, the vigil continued, hour by hour, candle by candle, breath by breath. The monastery, stone and silence intertwined, held the careful balance of nourishment, prayer, and observance, guiding each monk through the intricate tapestry of night. From the smallest detail, the placement of a cheese will on a shelf, to the recitation of a single psalm, every act was intentional, a quiet testament to mindfulness, discipline, and the delicate art of living with both the visible and invisible forces that shaped their lives. As the first light of dawn would one day seep into the cloister, the monks would emerge from the night renewed, grounded, and connected, carrying forward the lessons of quiet observation and devoted vigilance into the waking hours. But for now, in this suspended, gentle darkness, they remain, enveloped in ritual, observation, and the calm embrace of nocturnal devotion. And as we reflect on the prayers and vigils of these monks, one cannot help but wonder, how much did the simple act of eating influence these nocturnal practices? How did a humble wheel of cheese, consumed in the quiet of evening, ripple through the night and into the very fabric of monastic discipline? As the monastery night deepened, the humble presence of cheese on the monks' tables became far more than a simple sustenance. In the quiet hours, as shadows stretched long across stone corridors and candle flames flickered with gentle hesitation, cheese revealed itself as a substance that bridged the physical and mental worlds. It was not just food, it was a subtle architect of dreams, a quiet influencer of thoughts, and occasionally, a provocateur of unease. The monks, attuned to the rhythms of both body and soul, understood this in ways we might now find curious, even peculiar. Cheese, rich and heavy, carried properties that were carefully observed by the monastic community. Its fats, proteins, and even the slightest traces of mold or bacterial cultures could alter digestion, and in turn, the state of sleep. Yet beyond physiology, monks believed that cheese possessed a spiritual weight. Some texts hinted that certain cheeses, particularly those made from unpasteurized milk or aged under unusual conditions, could stir the imagination, awaken latent anxieties, or invite visions during the night. Eating it before bed was an act not taken lightly. It required mindfulness, attention, and an understanding of one's own constitution. In the solitude of their cells, monks often reflected on these effects. A bite of rich, pungent cheese in the evening might bring vivid dreams, in which saints and demons, angels and spirits, mingled in the dim corridors of the subconscious. These dreams were considered messages, subtle lessons, or even warnings. And because monasteries were not simply places of work but of learning, these nocturnal experiences were documented carefully. Notes might be made in small margins of texts, detailing the effects of a particular cheese on sleep, temperament, or spiritual insight. Over time, these observations became part of an oral and written tradition, guiding future generations in the proper handling and consumption of food. Yet the influence of cheese on the mind extended beyond dreams. It affected mood, perception, and the delicate balance of attention required for prayer and meditation. A heavy meal might cause drowsiness, sluggish reflection, or irritability. A certain type of cheese could produce slight restlessness, a heightened sensitivity to sounds in the cloister, or even a creeping sense of unease. Monks learned to recognize these subtle shifts, noting how the same will of cheese could bring calm to one individual while unsettling another. The interplay of diet, habit, and mental state was central to monastic life, an early understanding of the intimate connection between what we consume and how we think. Interestingly, the cultural and spiritual beliefs surrounding cheese were layered atop practical knowledge. Monks in different regions observed local varieties of cheese, comparing their effects, textures, and even colors. Some believed that yellow cheeses, rich and dense, held more earthly weight and could burden the soul if eaten after dusk. White, softer cheeses might be gentler, more suited to contemplation and quiet reflection. These associations were informed by centuries of practice, religious thought, and keen observation, blending superstition, physiology, and spiritual insight in a tapestry unique to monastic life. Cheese also carried symbolic meaning. In allegories and teachings, it was sometimes likened to temptation, indulgence, or even sin. Consuming it at the wrong hour, especially after nightfall, could awaken desires or thoughts the monk would rather suppress. The monastic understanding of human nature was intricate. They knew that seemingly trivial acts, eating a piece of cheese, drinking an herbal infusion, or staying awake too long, could ripple into the spiritual realm. Vigilance, therefore, extended beyond prayer and work. It included careful consideration of food and its effects on both body and mind. Monks often approached these practices with a mixture of caution and curiosity. They experimented, observing which combinations of foods led to calm sleep and which invited restlessness. They noted the timing, the quantity, the method of preparation. Every bite was an exploration, a small ritual entwined with faith. Over time, this discipline shaped a philosophy of care, not only for the soul but for the fragile interplay of body, mind, and spirit. Cheese, in its quiet, unassuming presence, became a teacher of mindfulness, an instrument in the pursuit of inner balance. In the candlelit stillness, the effects of cheese were sometimes subtle, sometimes startling. A monk might awaken in the middle of the night, a sense of unease pressing against the edges of consciousness, only to recall the evening meal. Others might find that the same cheese brought clarity, insight, or a dream vivid enough to be recounted in the morning chapter. This duality, both practical and mysterious, ensured that cheese was never a mundane matter in the monastery. It commanded attention, respect, and careful consideration, influencing the very texture of monastic nights. As we reflect on this, one begins to see that the fear of cheese at night was not irrational. It was born of observation, experience, and a belief in the delicate interweaving of physical and spiritual existence. The humble wheel, innocuous to outsiders, could shape thought, dream, and ritual in profound ways. For the monks, cheese was a mirror to the self, a subtle guide to understanding the mind and soul, and a reminder of the delicate balance required to navigate the sacred night. And so, as the monastery sleeps lightly around them, each monk's vigilance extends beyond prayers and chants, into the very meals that sustain them. Cheese, once a simple staple, becomes a symbol of care, awareness, and the quiet art of living in harmony with both body and spirit. This delicate balance, between sustenance and spirituality, between indulgence and restraint, between the tangible and the unseen, leads us to ask yet another question: how did such beliefs shape the daily routines and rituals of monks, and what role did other foods, not just cheese, play in their nocturnal lives? In the silent hours of the medieval monastery, as darkness enveloped the stone walls and the soft glow of lamps flickered against the rough-hewn surfaces, life did not entirely cease. The night was not merely a time for sleep, but a space where ritual, reflection, and careful restriction governed the movements and actions of every monk. Within this shadowed world, the fear of cheese at night was part of a broader understanding. The night demanded vigilance, respect, and an acute awareness of both physical and spiritual boundaries. Nighttime in the monastery was a structured affair. Every sound, the whisper of a prayer, the distant toll of a bell, the rustle of robes, was magnified in the quiet, carrying weight that daytime clamor would obscure. Monks moved deliberately, knowing that even the smallest disturbance could disrupt the meditative atmosphere, or, in their belief, attract unwanted attention from spiritual forces. Meals, conversations, and even bodily needs were regulated to maintain harmony with the rhythm of night. This was not mere discipline for its own sake, but a cultivation of mindfulness, a training of both body and mind to respond calmly to the subtleties of the nocturnal world. Food, particularly cheese, was carefully integrated into this system. The fear of eating certain foods too late in the evening was tied directly to the monastery's understanding of sleep, dreams, and spiritual vigilance. A heavy meal could cause restlessness or vivid dreams that were seen not as random but as meaningful. Cheese, with its dense textures and rich, sometimes unpredictable fermentation, was often singled out. It was believed to amplify the imagination, intensifying visions or anxieties during the night. Therefore, nighttime restrictions on consumption were not arbitrary. They were the culmination of generations of observation, experience, and spiritual reflection. But cheese was only one part of a complex web of rules and practices. Other foods, beverages, and even the timing of water intake were considered with care. Monks believed that late-night consumption of certain meats or fermented drinks could similarly disturb sleep and spirit. Each restriction was connected to a broader philosophy. The body was a vessel that affected the soul, and any imbalance could ripple into one's spiritual awareness. Nighttime restrictions extended beyond food, encompassing silence, the avoidance of unnecessary movement, and even the careful arrangement of candles and bedding. Every aspect of the environment was considered a potential influence on the mind, dreams, and spiritual receptivity. Nighttime rituals also included prayers, meditations, and readings designed to focus attention inward, calming the mind before sleep. Chanting, whispered reflections, and careful observance of light and shadow guided the monk into a state where the line between consciousness and dreaming was softly blurred. Within this quiet framework, the fear of cheese can be understood as a specific expression of a general principle. The monk must approach the night with respect, awareness, and a sense of intention. Eating at the wrong time, or choosing the wrong food, was more than a culinary error. It was a potential disruption of the delicate spiritual equilibrium. These practices were deeply interwoven with the monastic calendar. Seasonal changes, feast days, and liturgical observances shaped nighttime routines, including what could be eaten and when. Certain cheeses, particularly those aged or prepared according to special methods, were reserved for specific days, often consumed in daylight hours to avoid nocturnal disturbances. The same food might be a source of nourishment and celebration in the afternoon, yet a cause for anxiety after dark. This duality, practical and symbolic, exemplified the monk's nuanced understanding of cause and effect, both in body and soul. Moreover, nighttime restrictions were not enforced purely through edict or fear. They were part of a cultivated awareness, a training of the mind to recognize subtle cues. A monk might notice a sense of unease, a slight tension in the body, or an unusual dream after eating certain foods, and learn to adjust his habits accordingly. Observational knowledge passed quietly from one generation to the next, often recorded in margin notes, letters, or communal discussion. This created a culture in which nighttime rituals were both guided by tradition and continuously refined through personal experience. In this carefully orchestrated nocturnal world, cheese was never just cheese, and sleep was never just sleep. Each element, diet, light, sound, movement, was a thread in the intricate tapestry of monastic life. The rules, rituals, and restrictions shaped not only physical well-being but spiritual attentiveness, cultivating a sensitivity to the unseen and an understanding of the subtle energies that monks believed moved through the night. The fear of cheese at night, then, was not a trivial superstition but a reflection of a worldview in which every choice mattered, even the quietest and most ordinary. And as we contemplate the influence of these nighttime rituals, we can ask ourselves, how did such careful attention to diet, timing, and behavior influence the dreams and visions that monks experienced, and how might these nocturnal practices have shaped the broader culture of medieval monasticism? As the deep night settles over the monastery, and the shadows of the cloister stretch long across the cold stone floors, one begins to understand why the simplest of foods could take on such profound significance. Cheese, humble and ordinary by daylight, became something altogether different as dusk fell. In the quiet, isolated world of the monks, it was more than nourishment, it was a substance that carried the potential to shape the mind, the spirit, and even the dreams that filled their nocturnal hours. The connection between food and dreams was a subject of great attention. Medieval monks, deeply attuned to the interplay of body and soul, believed that what one ate during the day, and particularly before sleep, could influence the content, clarity, and even morality of dreams. Dreams were not seen as idle wandering of the mind, they were messages, sometimes warnings, sometimes revelations, and sometimes temptations. In this context, cheese was particularly notorious. Its richness, density, and fermentative properties were thought to stir the imagination, creating vivid, unsettling, or even dangerous visions in the night. Certain types of cheese were feared more than others. A strong, aged cheese, pungent and complex, could provoke what monks described as restless spirits in the mind, manifesting as dreams of temptation or confusion. Softer, milder cheeses were considered safer, yet even these were often avoided after the evening meal. The monks' texts and margin notes record warnings about late consumption, reflecting centuries of observation and collective experience. Eat with caution, for the night listens, one scribe wrote, emphasizing the idea that the night was an active participant in the monk's spiritual and mental life. The dreamscape induced by cheese was thought to be not only vivid but morally charged. A simple bite of curd or a slice of aged cheese might lead to dreams of indulgence, confrontation, or temptation. In some monasteries, it was believed that these dreams could open doors to darker spiritual forces, entities that thrived in the liminal spaces between sleep and wakefulness. The fear was not of the cheese itself, but of the consequences that its consumption could bring, dreams that might provoke guilt, temptation, or moral confusion. Cheese also became a marker of discipline and spiritual control. Monks who could resist the temptation to eat late at night demonstrated mastery over the body and mind, a control that extended into their dreams and their waking moral life. The practice of abstaining from certain foods after dusk was a test of patience, vigilance, and self-restraint, intertwined with a profound understanding of the link between diet, mental clarity, and spiritual health. In this sense, fear of cheese was inseparable from the broader philosophy of the monastery, that the physical and the spiritual were deeply interconnected, and that small choices could ripple into profound effects. The preparation and storage of cheese added another layer to this nocturnal relationship. Cheeses were often aged in cool, dark cellars beneath the monastery, where the smells and textures developed in ways that could influence both appetite and imagination. The sensory qualities of the cheese, its aroma, its texture, even the way it felt in the mouth, were all considered potential triggers for dreams. A cheese that had been carefully tended, made with ritual precision and proper timing, was safer than one that had been neglected or improperly stored. The monks' attentiveness to these details reflected their understanding that the night and the body were sensitive to the slightest influences. There were also social aspects to this fear. In communal monasteries, the consequences of a restless night could ripple through the dormitory. A monk experiencing vivid, unsettling dreams might toss and turn, whisper in sleep, or disturb others, spreading anxiety throughout the cloister. By avoiding cheese late at night, monks were not only protecting their own rest but maintaining the collective harmony of the community. The shared discipline around food, sleep, and dream management was an essential component of monastic life, reinforcing bonds of responsibility and care. Beyond fear, cheese was also associated with curiosity and experimentation. Some monks, in pursuit of spiritual insight or understanding, would sometimes consume small portions of cheese intentionally, observing the dreams that followed. These practices were documented in journals and letters, often cautiously, noting the effects on sleep, visions, and even mood. In these experiments, cheese became a tool for exploration, a bridge between the physical world and the shadowed landscapes of the mind. The same food that inspired caution could also inspire knowledge, reflection, and understanding of the subtle connections between body and spirit. Ultimately, the story of cheese and dreams reveals a monastery attuned to the rhythms of the night in a way that modern life rarely is. Every meal, every sound, every breath taken under the silent gaze of stone walls, contributed to an ecosystem of observation, mindfulness, and careful attention. Cheese, in its humble form, reminds us of how profoundly ordinary objects can influence thought, spirit, and experience when placed in a context of heightened awareness. It was a simple food, yet one imbued with meaning, mystery, and a hint of fear, a small but powerful reminder of the monk's attentiveness to the hidden worlds of night and mind. As we imagine these cloisters in darkness, with the gentle ticking of time and the soft rustle of robes, we can begin to see how the fear of cheese fits into a wider philosophy, that the night is alive with possibility, that dreams are shaped by our choices, and that even the most ordinary object can become a guardian, or a provocateur, of the soul. And as the last candle flickers and the final bell tolls, one cannot help but wonder, how did these dreams, shaped by cheese and caution, affect the lives and decisions of monks over generations? How much of their wisdom, their caution, and their mystical experiences were quietly nourished by something as simple as a piece of cheese? As the first light of dawn creeps over the monastery walls, brushing the stone cloisters with a pale, golden hue, the quiet of the night gives way to the gentle stirrings of morning. Birds begin their soft chorus outside the garden walls, dew glistens on the grass, and the faint aroma of herbs from the infirmary drifts through the corridors. The night's fears, visions, and whispered prayers recede, leaving in their place the clarity of day. And yet, the echoes of the nocturnal hours linger. In the minds of the monks, and perhaps in ours as we imagine these ancient routines, there is a sense that the lessons of the night endure beyond sleep. The fear of cheese, seemingly trivial, carries profound insights about discipline, mindfulness, and the subtle interplay of body, spirit, and environment. As dawn illuminates the monastery, the monks rise to their morning prayers, their bodies and minds shaped by the quiet vigilance of the night. Those who abstained from cheese, or approached it with caution, may find themselves refreshed, their dreams less turbulent, their souls lighter. Those who experimented, or yielded to temptation, carry with them the experiences of the night, lessons written not in ink, but in the rhythm of their own consciousness. This daily cycle of night and morning reflects a broader philosophy that pervaded monastic life. Every action, every choice, every meal was imbued with significance. The monks understood that the ordinary and the mundane could influence the extraordinary. Cheese, in its simplicity, became a mirror reflecting the delicate balance between restraint and indulgence, between fear and curiosity. And as the sunlight fills the dormitories, it illuminates not just the physical space, but the moral and spiritual landscapes the monks traversed each night. Morning in the monastery is also a time of reflection. The scribe, the gardener, the healer, all carry the remnants of the night's dreams into the day's work. Conversations in hushed tones reveal shared observations, a restless sleep, a strange vision, a dream of moral challenge or spiritual insight. The communal awareness of these experiences reinforces the interconnectedness of all in the cloister. One monk's vigilance, one monk's restraint, influences not only his own day but the rhythm of the entire community. In this sense, the lessons learned from cheese and dreams are as much about social harmony as they are about personal growth. The fear of cheese, however, was not merely superstition. It was part of a careful understanding of physiology, of digestion, and of the mind-body connection. Modern studies might smile at the notion that cheese provoked dreams, but the medieval monks were observing patterns of sleep, digestion, and consciousness with remarkable attentiveness. They noticed how rich foods influenced restlessness, how certain flavors or textures could spark imagination, and how the timing of consumption affected both physical comfort and mental clarity. In their own way, they were early students of what we now call sleep science. And so, the dawn becomes a time of synthesis. The night's fears, visions, and contemplations are woven into the day's understanding. Lessons learned in darkness are not discarded at sunrise, they inform how one approaches meals, duties, prayers, and interactions. Cheese, once feared, becomes a symbol of careful observation, of awareness of subtle effects, and of respect for the rhythms of life and the body. The monk's caution teaches us that even the smallest choices, the simplest rituals, can shape our inner lives profoundly. As the monastery awakens fully, the bells toll again, calling the community to morning prayer. There is a gentle, unspoken acknowledgement that the night's mysteries have passed safely, that vigilance has been rewarded, and that the wisdom of simple foods and simple actions continues to guide the cloister. Outside, the sun rises over distant hills, casting long shadows that will stretch again into night, bringing with them new opportunities for reflection, caution, and understanding. And now, as we imagine leaving the monastery ourselves, stepping softly out of stone halls and cloistered gardens, we carry a quiet lesson from the monks who once feared cheese at night, that attention to the ordinary, respect for the rhythms of life, and mindfulness of small influences can illuminate even the most hidden corners of our minds. In sleep, in dreams, in waking hours, there is wisdom in restraint, insight in curiosity, and balance in awareness. And with this understanding, we come gently to the close of our journey. The heavy wooden doors of the monastery swing shut, the last echoes fade into silence, and we are left with a calm, reflective quiet, ready to drift into our own restful sleep, accompanied by the gentle lessons of the medieval night. As the day fully awakens, we step back from the quiet corridors and shadowed gardens of the monastery. The monks have begun their morning routines, the bells have tolled, and the soft sunlight warms the stone walls. Tonight's journey through fear, caution, and contemplation has come to its close, and we are left with a sense of serenity, the kind that comes from understanding the smallest details of life can carry the greatest lessons. Cheese, a simple food, has revealed itself to be far more than nourishment. It became a symbol of mindfulness, of the interplay between body and spirit, and of the profound attentiveness that shape every aspect of monastic life. In their quiet vigilance, the monks teach us that even the ordinary holds the extraordinary, and that care, patience, and reflection transform our daily routines into something meaningful. And now, dear listener, as your own night continues and your body settles into rest, may the echoes of candlelight, stone cloisters, and whispered prayers accompany you. Let the lessons of the medieval night, restraint, awareness, and quiet curiosity, fade gently into your dreams. Thank you for joining this long and calm exploration. If you enjoyed this journey, consider returning to wander again through history's quiet corners, where the forgotten details await, and the night speaks softly to those who listen. Sleep well, and may your dreams carry the gentle wisdom of the monks who feared cheese at night.